All right, man, peace. So, brothers, this is going to be the preview video for the rematch that's occurring tomorrow night for the heavyweight championship between Mr. Andy Ruiz and Mr. Anthony Joshua. And for those of us who follow the boxing world, we know that this is a crossroads fight for both fighters, an extremely pivotal moment in both fighters' careers. I'm not going to lean towards either fighter to say that it's more important, because it's very clear that if either fighter loses, they're going to have to be rendered far more to the back of the line when it comes to serious heavyweight contenders. And for the fighter who wins, that's going to place him back in the position to be almost pretty much the mandatory next challenger to the victor of the fight that's going to be occurring next year between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. So this is a very important match that is occurring tomorrow night. If you're going to ask me who do I think is going to be victorious in tomorrow night's bout, this is one of the harder fights for me to predict, because it depends on which Anthony Joshua shows up. Are we going to see a more mature Anthony Joshua in better condition, who understands how to use the ring better, knows how to change pace, understands how to attack his opponent and throw off the attacks of his opponent? Someone who has a firmer grasp of how to clinch, especially when he's being rushed, walk his man back to the middle of the ring, utilize his greater reach? Or are we going to see what we saw in the last fight? Someone who was extremely chinny, got nervous when he realized that his opponent had far better skills than he thought, had far more resilience than he thought, and he started to panic, especially later on in the fight when he realized that his conditioning was going to be a factor, and when he came to understand that this person knew how to attack him, knew how to break him down. This is not going to be a very long preview, because for all intents and purposes, we've already seen what both of these fighters can do and how they match up. The keys for Anthony Joshua, once again, he has to use his jab, he has to hold, he has to clinch. This is one of these fights that he might have to fight ugly. It's very clear by the weigh-in that he's taking this fight far more seriously. He weighed in at 237, which is just about the perfect weight for him. I stated after the previous fight that he was clearly out of shape and that he's way too muscle bound. He's a fighter who does hold on to a lot of muscle mass, but as we can see here during the weigh-in, he slimmed down. So hopefully that will help him pick up on his speed and also improve his endurance over the course of the fight. I think that he grasped that this is a fighter, Andy Ruiz, who's not going to be easy to dispatch early, at least presumably. You never know what can happen, because Andy Ruiz weighed in at 283, which was heavier than he was before the first fight. Now, he claims that the reason why his weigh-in was so heavy was because he spent most of the day eating. They had to wait a very long time for the weigh-in, and he was eating over the course of the day. He also weighed in with his clothes on and with a sombrero on. So we'll see what happens tomorrow night. As we all should have learned from the first fight, you should not judge a book by its cover. What are the keys for Andy Ruiz? Do pretty much the same thing that he did in the first fight. The only difference is that he's going to have to move his head more, because I expect Anthony Joshua to be far more active. Andy Ruiz showed great craft in the first fight. Excellent foot placement, great balance, tremendous hand speed, great heart, good chin, good recovery, which means what? He was in condition despite the fact that he was a fat boy. Very good power. He understands how to trap his opponent. And as I've stated, Anthony Joshua is a fighter who's not that comfortable fighting backwards. So that's one of the keys for Andy Ruiz. Keep him on the back foot, try to get him along the ropes, hope that he forgets that he has to clinch and that he wants to actually engage and try to flurry with you. If you're Andy Ruiz, you love that because you have the faster hands, you have the better craft. So early on in the fight, it's going to be very important for Andy Ruiz to try to give Anthony Joshua flashbacks of what occurred in the first fight. Pump that fear back into his heart like it was in his heart in the last fight, circa round 6 and 7, whichever round that he got knocked out in and got hurt in. You have to reestablish that very early so that you can win the psychological battles. Get Anthony Joshua to doubt himself, and then hopefully wear him down in the middle rounds and maybe get another stoppage. As I've already stated, for Anthony Joshua, the keys are: make sure that you hold, especially when he starts to press you along the ropes. Do not try to exchange with that man. He hits just as hard as you, and his hands are far faster than yours. And I just don't think that Anthony Joshua is going to have this great growth spurt in boxing craft and skill in between the last fight and this one. He He's still pretty much going to be the same guy. He's going to be chinny, so he's going to have to show a lot of heart. I do believe that at some point in the fight, he's probably going to get knocked down again. It would not surprise me if Ruiz gets knocked down again. As of right now, I'm going to say that I'll pick Anthony Joshua by decision. That's if he executes the game plan that I've laid out of holding, walking his man back out to the middle of the ring, jabbing, moving, and holding. Sometimes you have to fight fights like that to get to the next level, get to the next phase. Every fight cannot be pretty. He's going to have to utilize that game plan, in my view, if he wants to win. Now, if at some point in the middle of the fight he's able to get the knockdown on Ruiz, and he feels that comfortable with his conditioning that he can put the pedal to the metal, of course, go for the stoppage. I still believe that Ruiz is the better overall fighter. I just believe that if Joshua were to use that game plan, make sure that you break up Ruiz's rhythm. Maybe you can get a decision later on in the fight, or who knows, maybe a stoppage. He almost was able to get the stoppage in the first fight. It's just that his conditioning would not allow him to really put the pedal to the metal once Ruiz got back up. And Ruiz is a better fighter than Anthony Joshua overall. I just have the sneaky suspicion that Joshua is going to be more informed on how to use some of his physical advantages to his advantage in this fight. But we're going to find out. Once again, it would not surprise me at all if Ruiz were to get the knockout, if Ruiz were to get the decision. I'm just going with Joshua because something tells me that he's going to fight a far more conservative fight, a far smarter fight in this bout than he did in the first one, where he did not take Ruiz very seriously at all, and he came back to bite him. I'm also not a fan of the fact that Ruiz comes into the weigh-in at 283, which from what I understand is the second highest weigh-in for a heavyweight champion in the history of boxing. So that tells me that, you know, maybe he has a game plan. Who knows? Maybe his game plan is to wear Joshua down by using more of his weight. I don't know. I just don't see how that's going to help him when he's not a fighter like a Joe Frazier or an Ernie Shavers who's looking for one-punch knockouts. Ruiz has good power, but he likes to throw a lot of combos. And I just think that due to the fact that Joshua's going to be in better shape and probably move more, it would probably have behooved him to come into better shape himself. But, you know, we'll see. Ruiz has great footwork. He knows how to cut the ring off, so maybe he'll nullify Joshua's movement. I just think that Joshua's going to be far more mentally acute, and that might win the day for him. So as of right now, I'm going to pick Joshua by 12-round decision. It would not surprise me if both men get knocked down. It would also not surprise me if Ruiz were to win. Do I think that Joshua can beat Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder? We'll see. The great thing about this heavyweight landscape is that all of these fighters have flaws. Tyson Fury does not have great one-punch knockout power. Wilder does not have great ring craft or generalship per se, but he just has unbelievable, ethereal knockout power. Joshua is very chinny and someone who's a bit awkward in the ring, a bit muscle-bound. Ruiz has great craft and good power, but he has issues with his physique and some of his decision-making. So we'll see what happens. Once again, I'm picking Joshua by decision if he fights intelligently. If he comes into the ring trying to get some get back and stop Ruiz, he's going to get countered and he's probably going to get knocked out himself or severely hurt, staggered throughout the fight. And brothers, let me also say this before I forget. It will be very interesting to see where Anthony Joshua's career goes should he suffer defeat at the hands of Andy Ruiz once again. Because as I stated in the Aftermath video, after their first fight, Anthony Joshua strikes me as someone who does not particularly love the sport. I think that he likes the sport. I think that he loves many of the things that boxing and being a championship level boxer affords him. But I don't think that he loves it per se. But who knows, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll prove me wrong against Andy Ruiz. He might get dropped a couple times, get back up, and be able to show his fortitude and grit like he was against Klitschko. Who knows? But he just strikes me as someone that should he get stopped again by Ruiz, or even lose again against Ruiz, that he would strongly consider retiring. Because he is a woke athlete. He's someone who's heavily into the quote-unquote social conscious aspect. And that's not necessarily a bad thing per se. But in the field of pugilism, you have to be so zoned in. There are very few athletes who are able to be quote-unquote activists or be a part of the social consciousness of society and also box. There's only one Muhammad Ali, and Muhammad Ali was pretty much an offshoot of his time period. He was a manifestation of his time period. Right now we're living in a time period that is highly contrived, and so many athletes are trying to be woke, and it's kind of distracting them from what they need to do. Even LeBron James, who's tried to market himself as the patron saint of woke athletes, just prior to this season, when they were confronting him about China, what did he say? I have to focus on my team, so on and so forth. Because the masquerade was over. Just getting back to Anthony Joshua. I could see him, should he lose, retiring from the sport of boxing. But we'll see. So peace.